The crimson sand of Kepler 442b stretched endlessly under the pale orange sun, broken only by the twisted metal wreckage of what had once been a sleek Vorthak scout vessel. Steam rose from the crash site where superheated metal met the planet's thin atmosphere, creating ghostly wisps that danced in the alien breeze. Zara-Eth pressed her scaled hand against the gaping wound in her side, dark blue blood seeping between her fingers. The pain came in waves, each breath a struggle as her damaged lung fought for the thin oxygen this world provided. Her golden eyes, once bright with the confidence of a decorated Vorthak navigator, now held only desperation and the growing certainty of abandonment. She had awakened 3 cycles ago to find herself alone among the debris. Her crew, her squadron, her entire unit, gone. The emergency beacon that should have brought rescue had been deliberately disabled, the power cells removed with surgical precision. Even her personal communicator had been stripped away. The message was clear. Zara-Eth, daughter of House Veltar, was no longer worthy of salvation. The dishonor of her recent court-martial followed her even here, to this forgotten rock at the edge of civilized space. The charges had been political. Everyone knew that. But politics ruled the Vorthak hegemony with an iron fist. She had spoken against the massacre of a civilian transport, had refused to fire on unarmed refugees. For that moment of conscience, she had been stripped of rank, honor, and now, apparently, her very life. Zara-Eth dragged herself toward a piece of hull plating that might provide shade from the burning sun. Each movement sent fresh agony through her injured ribs, but dying in the open would be worse than dying slowly. At least here she might find some dignity in her final moments. As she settled against the makeshift shelter, a new sound reached her sensitive ears. The distant hum of engines, different from any Vorthak design she knew. The pitch was wrong, the rhythm unfamiliar. Hope flickered briefly in her chest before reason crushed it. If rescue had come for her, it would be Vorthak ships with their distinctive ion drives. This was something else. The vessel that appeared over the rocky ridge was unlike anything in the hegemony's databases. Roughly cylindrical, with bulbous sections that spoke of function over form, it moved with the ungainly grace of something built by beings who valued efficiency over elegance. Scorch marks along its hull suggested it had seen combat, but it flew with the confidence of a ship that had emerged victorious. The craft landed with a heavy thud that spoke of substantial mass, kicking up clouds of red dust that made Zara-Eth's damaged lungs spasm with coughing fits. She tried to make herself smaller behind her shelter, though part of her wondered why she bothered. Death by alien hands would be no worse than death by exposure, and perhaps it would be quicker. A hatch opened with the hiss of equalizing pressure, and a figure emerged that made Zara-Eth's eyes widen in surprise. The being was smaller than she had expected, bipedal like herself, but more compact, with pale skin instead of scales and strange flexible hair that moved in the wind. Its clothing was practical, heavy boots, thick pants, and a jacket that bore no insignia she recognized. The alien looked around the crash site with what appeared to be professional interest, its small eyes taking in details with the methodical scanning of someone accustomed to evaluating disaster scenes. When those eyes fell on Zara-Eth's hiding spot, she held her breath and tried to become one with the metal behind her. But the being's senses were sharper than she had hoped. It approached slowly, hands visible and empty, speaking in a language she didn't recognize. The sounds were harsh and guttural compared to the musical tones of Vorthak speech, but the tone was gentle, almost questioning. When the alien rounded her shelter and saw her fully, it stopped abruptly. Zara-Eth found herself staring into small brown eyes that held an expression she couldn't immediately identify. Not hunger, not aggression, but something softer, something that reminded her disturbingly of the way her childhood caretaker had looked at injured animals. The being spoke again, the same incomprehensible syllables, but this time it gestured to itself and said something that sounded like Marcus. It repeated the sound, pointing to its chest, and Zara-Eth realized it was giving her its name. She tried to speak, to tell this Marcus to stay away, that she was dangerous despite her condition, but only a croak emerged. The blood loss was making her weak, and her translator implant had been damaged in the crash. Even if it had worked, she doubted it contained this species' language. Marcus moved closer and Zara-Eth tensed for attack or capture, but instead the being knelt just outside her reach and began pulling items from a pack on its back. The first was a small device that beeped and clicked as it was pointed in her direction. Some kind of scanner, she realized. The second was a container of water that Marcus opened and offered to her. The sight of clear liquid made Zara-Eth's parched throat constrict with need, but she forced herself to remain still. This could be poison, or worse. But Marcus seemed to understand her hesitation. Without breaking eye contact, it brought the container to its own lips and took several swallows, then offered it again. The simple act of trust broke something in Zara-Eth's defenses. When had anyone last shown her such consideration? When had anyone cared if she lived or died? With a shaking hand, she reached for the water. The liquid was warm and had a slightly metallic taste, but it was the most wonderful thing she had experienced in days. She drank greedily until Marcus gently pulled the container back, speaking in what she was beginning to recognize as a concerned tone. Too much too fast would make her sick, she realized. This alien understood basic medical care. Marcus returned the water to its pack and withdrew something else, a flat rectangular device that glowed with soft light. The being's fingers moved across its surface with practiced ease, and suddenly it spoke in perfect, if somewhat stilted, Vorthak. Forgive poor translation. Device learning your language from vocal patterns. Are you requiring medical assistance? The grammatical structure was wrong and the pronunciation clumsy, but it was unmistakably her native tongue. Zara-Eth stared at the device, then at Marcus, her mind struggling to process what she was witnessing. A universal translator that could learn languages in real time? Such technology was theoretical at best in hegemony science. What are you? She managed to whisper. Marcus smiled, and the expression transformed its alien features into something almost warm. Am human. Am called Marcus Chen. Ship detected crash signal, came to investigate. You are needing help, yes? A human. Zara-Eth had heard whispers of this species, fragmentary reports, from the frontier territories where first contact protocols were still being established. They were supposed to be primitive, barely capable of crude spaceflight. Yet this Marcus carried technology that surpassed hegemony science and spoke of detecting her crash from space. My crew, she said, the words coming easier as the water cleared her throat. They are gone. Left me. Marcus's expression darkened, and he spoke a word in his own language that needed no translation. It was clearly profanity. Is wrong thing. No person should be abandoned. The flat certainty in his voice surprised her. Among the Vorthak, abandoning the dishonored was not only acceptable but required. Honor demanded it. Yet this human spoke as if the concept itself was abhorrent. Was navigator aboard scout vessel, she explained haltingly. Crashed during storm. When awakened, all others gone. Emergency beacon disabled. Marcus's scanner had been beeping steadily, and now he frowned at its readouts. He spoke to his translation device in rapid human speech, and it responded in Vorthak. You have injuries of serious nature, broken ribs, punctured lung, significant blood loss. Without medical treatment, survival time is limited. Zara-Eth almost laughed at the clinical assessment of her doom. Yes, I know. This is why they left me. Wasted resources on the dishonored. Dishonored? Marcus looked confused. What is meaning? She found herself explaining, though she wasn't sure why. Perhaps because death was close and it no longer mattered. Perhaps because this strange being had shown her more kindness in minutes than her own people had in months. She told him about the court-martial, about refusing to fire on refugees, about the shame that had followed her across the galaxy. Marcus listened without interruption, his brown eyes growing harder with each detail. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the wreckage of her ship. "You protected innocent people," he said finally. "This is what humans call honor. Not among my people. Among Vorthak, honor means obedience, loyalty to the state above all else. Then Vorthak understanding of honor is broken." Marcus stood and began unpacking more equipment from his seemingly bottomless bag. "Human honor means protecting those who cannot protect themselves, means standing for what is right even when difficult." He produced a device that looked like a medical scanner, crossed with a weapon, all smooth curves and blinking lights. "We'll attempt emergency treatment. Cannot promise success, but we'll try." Zara-Eth felt tears forming in her golden eyes, a reaction that puzzled her. "Why? I am nothing to you. Unknown species. Unknown person." Marcus paused in his preparations and looked directly at her. "Are you not person who needs help?" "Yes. But then is enough." He activated the device and it hummed to life. "Humans saying, 'No one left behind,' means we do not abandon people. Ever." As Marcus began working, his movements sure and practiced, despite treating an alien physiology he had never encountered before, Zara-Eth felt something she had not experienced in months. Hope. Not just for survival, but for the possibility that somewhere in this vast universe there were beings who understood what honor truly meant. The medical device sent warm pulses through her injured side, and she could feel her damaged tissues responding, beginning to heal. The technology was far beyond anything in hegemony medical science, yet this human wielded it as if it were commonplace. "How do you know medicine for my species?" she asked. Marcus didn't look up from his work. "Device scans and adapts. Human medical technology designed for unknown biology. We meet many species in our travels." "Your people are explorers?" "Among other things." There was something in his tone, a suggestion of depths she hadn't yet glimpsed. "We are adaptable." As the treatment continued, Zara-Eth found herself studying her rescuer more closely. His movements were economical and precise, speaking of training and experience. His clothing, while plain, was made of materials that seemed to shift and adjust to environmental conditions. Most tellingly, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had faced danger and survived. "You are military," she said. It wasn't a question. Marcus glanced up briefly, and she saw acknowledgement in his eyes. "Was. Now am independent contractor. Salvage and rescue, mostly." "Lucky for me." "Luck had nothing to do with it." The medical device beeped, and Marcus nodded with satisfaction. "Emergency treatment complete, lung sealed, major bleeding stopped, but you need proper medical facility for full healing." Zara-Eth tested her breathing and found it much easier. The constant pain in her side had faded to a dull ache. "I have nowhere to go. My people have abandoned me." "Then you come with me." Marcus began packing his equipment away with the same methodical efficiency he had shown in using it. "My ship has medical bay. Can complete healing while we decide what to do next." "I cannot pay you. I have nothing." Marcus stopped and looked at her with an expression of mild exasperation. "Did not ask for payment. Human custom is to help those in need without expectation of reward." The concept was so foreign to Zara-Eth's experience that she struggled to believe it. In hegemony space, everything had a price. Every service required payment or obligation. The idea of freely given aid was almost incomprehensible. "Your customs are strange," she said finally. "So I am told." Marcus stood and extended his hand toward her. "Can you walk?" With his help, Zaraeth managed to stand. Her legs were shaky and her balance uncertain, but she remained upright. Together they made their slow way toward the human ship, which seemed larger up close than it had from a distance. "What is your name?" Marcus asked as they walked. "Zaraeth, formerly of House Veltar." Zaraeth. He pronounced it carefully, getting the accent almost right on the second try. "Is good name? Strong name?" "It was my grandmother's name. She was a war hero before the current regime came to power." "Sounds like honor runs in your family." Zaraeth thought about that as they approached the ship's lowered ramp. Perhaps it did. Perhaps that was why she had been unable to fire on innocents, despite the consequences. Perhaps some things were more important than politics and survival. The interior of the human vessel was a revelation. While the exterior had looked purely functional, the inside revealed a level of sophistication that took her breath away. The corridor they entered was lined with panels that glowed softly, providing light that somehow felt more natural than the harsh illumination used on Vorthak ships. The air itself felt different, cleaner, with a subtle scent that reminded her of the forest gardens of her homeworld. "Welcome aboard Wanderer's Rest," Marcus said as they made their way toward what she assumed was the medical bay. "Sorry for mess. Was not expecting guests." Zaraeth looked around but saw no mess. Every surface was clean and organized, every system humming quietly with well-maintained efficiency. If this was how humans defined messy, their standards for order were remarkably high. The medical bay, when they reached it, was another shock. The bed that Marcus guided her to was more comfortable than anything in hegemony medical facilities, automatically adjusting to support her injured frame. The diagnostic equipment that activated as she lay down was so advanced she could barely follow its operation. "This technology," she said wonderingly, "it is centuries ahead of anything my people possess." Marcus busied himself with the controls, but she caught his slight smile. "Humans are good at solving problems, medical problems especially. We are fragile species in many ways. Had to become very good at healing ourselves." The medical bed began its work, sending gentle warmth through her body as it completed the healing process Marcus had started. Zaraeth felt strength returning to her limbs, felt the last of her pain fading away. "How long have your people been spacefaring?" she asked. "Not long by galactic standards, few hundred years, but we learn fast." A few hundred years. The Vorthak had been traveling between stars for millennia, yet their technology seemed primitive compared to what she was experiencing. How had humanity advanced so quickly? "You must be peaceful people," she said, "to focus so much on healing and helping." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was careful. "We can be peaceful, when allowed to be." There was something in his tone that made her look at him more closely. "And when not allowed? Then we solve problems in other ways." The medical bed chimed softly and powered down. Zaraeth sat up, amazed at how completely healed she felt. Not just from the crash injuries, but better than she had felt in months. The stress and fatigue of her recent trials seemed to have melted away. "It is done," Marcus said. "You are fully healed." "Thank you." The words seemed inadequate for what he had done. "I owe you my life." "Owe me nothing. But if you want to show gratitude, help me understand situation better. Your people, are they coming back?" Zaraeth considered the question. "Eventually. This system contains resources they want, but not for me. Never for me." "Good to know." Marcus activated a communication panel and spoke in rapid human language. The ship shuddered slightly as engines came online. "We will go somewhere safe, then decide what comes next." As Wanderer's Rest lifted off from the surface of Kepler 442b, Zara-Eth watched through the viewport as her crashed vessel shrank to a speck and then disappeared entirely. With it went the last connection to her old life, her old identity as a Vorthak navigator. "Where will we go?" she asked. Marcus checked his navigation displays. "First, to station where you can contact any friends or family. Make sure they know you survive." Zara-Eth thought about that sadly. "There is no one. My family disowned me after the court-martial. My friends—" She trailed off. In the hegemony, friendship rarely survived political disgrace. "Then we find new purpose for you," Marcus said simply. "Universe is big place. Many opportunities for someone with skills." As they entered hyperspace and the stars stretched into lines of light, Zara-Eth reflected on the strange turn her life had taken. This morning she had been dying alone on a forgotten world, abandoned by everything she had ever known. Now she was alive and traveling through space with a being whose people seemed to possess technology and values that challenged everything she thought she knew about the galaxy. "Marcus," she said quietly. "Yes? What kind of opportunities?" He smiled that warm human smile again. "That depends. What would you like to do with your life?" It was such a simple question. Yet Zara-Eth realized no one had ever asked her that before. In hegemony society, one's path was determined by birth, aptitude tests, and political necessity. Personal desires were irrelevant. "I want to help people," she said finally. "I want to make sure no one else goes through what I did, being abandoned when they need help most." "Good goal," Marcus nodded approvingly. "Very human goal. Human? We have saying, be the change you wish to see in the world. You want to help others because you know what it is like to need help." As Wanderer's Rest carried them deeper into space, Zara-Eth pondered this human wisdom. Perhaps there was something to be learned from these strange beings with their advanced technology and simple kindness. Perhaps there was a way to rebuild her life around principles that actually mattered. Outside the viewport, the universe spread before them in all its infinite possibility, and for the first time in months, Zara-Eth looked toward the future with hope. 3 standard days aboard Wanderer's Rest had given Zara-Eth a new perspective on humanity, though she was beginning to suspect she had barely scratched the surface of what these beings were capable of. The ship itself was a masterwork of engineering that seemed to anticipate her needs before she voiced them. The environmental systems had automatically adjusted to her comfort preferences after the first few hours, and the food synthesizer had somehow analyzed her biology and began producing meals perfectly suited to her nutritional requirements. Marcus had been patient with her endless questions, explaining human technology and customs with the gentle manner of a teacher rather than the superiority of someone demonstrating advanced knowledge to a primitive. It was yet another example of human behavior that contradicted everything she thought she knew about how advanced species treated their inferiors. "The translation device," she said, as they shared what Marcus called breakfast in the ship's small dining area. "How does it learn languages so quickly?" Marcus swallowed a bite of something he had called pancakes, which had turned out to be surprisingly delicious despite their simple appearance. "Pattern recognition algorithms combined with quantum processing matrices. Analyze vocal patterns, grammatical structures, contextual usage. Most languages follow similar mathematical principles, just expressed differently." The casual way he described technology that would revolutionize hegemony linguistics made Zara-Eth shake her head in amazement. "And every human ship has such devices?" "Standard equipment. First rule of exploration is communication. Cannot help people if cannot understand them. That phrase again, helping people. It seemed to be a central concept in human thinking, woven into everything from their technology to their most basic decisions. Zara was beginning to understand that Marcus's rescue of her had not been unusual kindness, but simply how humans operated. "Tell me about your people," she said. "Your history. How did you advance so quickly?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, staring out the viewport at the swirling colors of hyperspace. When he spoke, his voice carried undertones of something darker than his usual calm demeanor. "Humans learn fast because we have to. Our homeworld, Earth, not kind place. Natural disasters, diseases, predators, resource scarcity. For most of our history, we struggled just to survive. Made us adaptable. But surely once you achieved spaceflight, things became easier." Marcus's laugh held no humor. "First aliens we met tried to enslave us, said we were primitive, worthless except as labor, took our people for mining colonies and forced breeding programs." Zara felt her stomach clench. The casual way he described such horrors spoke of a people who had endured the unthinkable and emerged stronger for it. "What did you do?" "What humans always do when threatened. We adapted, learned, fought back." Marcus met her eyes, and she saw steel beneath the kindness. "Took us 50 years, but we freed every human slave, destroyed every alien facility that had held our people, made it very clear that humanity was not available for conquest. The galaxy accepted this. Eventually, after we demonstrated that the cost of enslaving humans was higher than any profit to be gained." Marcus returned to his breakfast, but the relaxed atmosphere had shifted. "Most species learned to trade with us instead of trying to dominate us. Found that arrangement much more beneficial for everyone involved." Zara considered this revelation. The human sitting across from her, who had shown such gentle care in healing her injuries, was also member of a species that had fought a galactic war for their freedom and won. No wonder their technology was so advanced. It had been forged in the crucible of survival against impossible odds. An alarm began chiming throughout the ship, interrupting her thoughts. Marcus was instantly alert, his breakfast forgotten as he headed for the bridge. Zara followed, her navigator training making her curious about whatever had triggered the warning. The main display showed a tactical overview of their current position, with multiple red contacts approaching from 3 directions. The computer was cycling through identification protocols, but the vessels remained classified as unknown hostiles. "Pirates," Marcus said grimly, his hands moving across the control panels with practiced efficiency. "Ship signature suggests they are Corvin raiders. Probably detected our hyperspace trail and decided to investigate." Zara studied the display. 8 vessels in a standard pincer formation, designed to prevent escape. The Corvin were known throughout this sector for their brutality. They took everything of value and left no survivors to report their presence. "Your ship is armed?" she asked, though given what she had learned about humans, the question seemed almost rhetorical. "Yes, but 8-to-1 is poor odds even for human technology." Marcus was already plotting course corrections, trying to find a route clear of the approaching raiders. Better to avoid fight if possible. The ship shuddered as Wanderer's Rest dropped out of hyperspace, the raiders having somehow forced an interdiction. On the display, the 8 Corvin vessels spread out in an enveloping pattern, their weapons already charging for battle. "Human vessel!" A harsh voice crackled over the communications channel, the translator struggling with the Corvin's guttural language. "You will surrender cargo and passengers for processing. Resistance will result in destruction." Marcus activated the return channel, his voice calm despite their desperate situation. "This is Independent Vessel Wanderer's Rest. We carry no cargo of value. Suggest you find different target." The Corvin response was immediate and brutal, a plasma bolt that splashed harmlessly against Wanderer's Rest's shields, but made the ship's intent clear. Further communication would be conducted in the language of violence. Shields at 95%, Marcus reported to himself, his hands dancing over controls Zaraeth couldn't begin to identify. Weapons online. Engine output at maximum. What can I do to help? Zaraeth asked, her navigator instincts demanding action. Marcus glanced at her with surprise. You want to fight? These are Corvin raiders. I have seen what they do to prisoners. She gestured toward a secondary console. I am trained navigator, can plot courses, manage sensors, coordinate targeting if needed. For a moment, Marcus studied her face, as if measuring her resolve. Then he nodded and activated the console she had indicated. Sensor control is yours. I need to know where they are before they know where we are. Zaraeth slipped into the navigator's chair and felt the familiar comfort of purpose settle over her. The human interface was different from Vorthak systems, but the underlying principles were universal. Within moments, she had the sensors configured for maximum resolution and began feeding Marcus tactical information. 4 vessels moving to starboard, she reported. 3 more advancing from port. 8th ship holding back, probably command vessel. Good. Standard Corvin tactics. Marcus's hands moved over the weapons controls. They expect us to run or surrender. When we do neither, they will be confused. The first wave of raiders opened fire, plasma bolts and kinetic projectiles converging on Wanderer's Rest from multiple angles. Zaraeth watched the tactical display in amazement as Marcus somehow threaded the ship through the devastating barrage, taking only glancing hits that barely registered on the shield meters. How? She began, but Marcus was already returning fire. The human weapons were unlike anything she had ever seen. Instead of the crude energy beams or explosive projectiles favored by most species, Wanderer's Rest launched what appeared to be small metallic spheres that somehow curved around the raiders' defensive fire to strike with impossible precision. The lead Corvin vessel simply vanished in a flash of contained nuclear fire. 7 contacts remaining, Zaraeth reported, her voice steadier than she felt. Good. Much better odds. Marcus brought the ship around in a turn that should have been impossible for a vessel of Wanderer's Rest's apparent size. Humans have saying, never fight fair when fighting for your life. The second raider tried to ram them, probably hoping to disable the ship for capture. Marcus waited until the last possible moment before activating what he casually called evasive protocols. Wanderer's Rest simply phased partially out of normal space, allowing the raider to pass harmlessly through their position before rematerializing behind it. Another precision strike removed the second threat. That is not possible, Zaraeth whispered, staring at the display. Physics does not allow for partial dimensional displacement. Human physics does. Marcus sounded almost amused as he targeted the third vessel. Told you we are good at solving problems. The remaining raiders, clearly recognizing they had encountered something far beyond their capabilities, tried to flee. Marcus let them go, though Zaraeth noticed he made careful note of their escape vectors. Why not pursue? She asked, as the last of the Corvin ships vanished into hyperspace. Because word will spread that this sector is dangerous for raiders. Marcus was already plotting a new course, taking them away from the battle site. Better than killing them all and having their replacements show up next week. As Wanderer's Rest resumed its journey, Zaraeth found herself reassessing everything she thought she knew about humanity. The technology she had witnessed in combat was easily 1,000 years beyond anything in hegemony space. Partial dimensional displacement, precision nuclear weapons, impossible maneuverability, any one of these capabilities would revolutionize galactic warfare. How many species know what humans are truly capable of? She asked quietly. Marcus considered the question carefully. Few. Most see us as helpful traders and explorers. We prefer it that way. But why? With such power you could rule the galaxy. To what end? Marcus genuinely seemed puzzled by the concept. Ruling requires forcing others to obey. Much easier to trade, to cooperate, to help when help is needed. Everyone benefits, no one has to be conquered. It was such a fundamentally different world view from what Zaraeth had grown up with that she struggled to process it. The Vorthak hegemony existed to expand, to conquer, to bring order to chaos through force. The idea of a species that possessed ultimate power but chose not to use it was almost incomprehensible. "Your leaders must be remarkable beings," she said finally. "We do not have leaders the way you mean. Humans govern ourselves through cooperation and consensus. No one person or group controls everyone else. Anarchy? Democracy. Ancient human concept. Every person has voice in decisions that affect them." The more she learned about humanity, the more Zaraeth realized how limited her understanding of galactic civilization had been. The hegemony portrayed itself as the pinnacle of order and advancement, but compared to what she was seeing, her people were barbaric children playing at empire. "Marcus," she said slowly, "when you rescued me, you said humans have a saying, 'No one left behind.' Is this really how your people live?" "Try to. Not always successful, but we try." He adjusted their course slightly, following some navigation protocol she didn't recognize. Human history is a long story of learning to take care of each other. Started with families, then tribes, then nations. Eventually extended to entire species. Now includes any person who needs help, regardless of what world they come from. The simple statement carried profound implications. A species that had evolved from brutality and hardship into something capable of galactic compassion, yet retained the strength to defend that compassion against any threat. No wonder other civilizations found it easier to trade than fight. "Where are we going now?" she asked. "Station called Haven's Gate. Neutral trading post in unclaimed space. Good place to find opportunities for someone with your skills." "What kind of opportunities?" Marcus smiled that warm, human smile. "That depends on what you want to do. Mentioned you want to help people who have been abandoned. Many ways to accomplish that goal." As they traveled, Marcus showed her more of the ship's capabilities. The medical bay was actually a full biological research facility capable of treating any known life form and developing treatments for unknown ones. The cargo holds could be reconfigured for refugee transport, disaster relief, or mobile hospital operations. The workshop contained manufacturing equipment that could produce everything from emergency shelters to sophisticated electronics. Wanderer's Rest is not really salvage ship, she realized. It is mobile humanitarian platform. Among other things, Marcus was calibrating some device she couldn't identify. Humans build things that can adapt to many purposes. Never know what situations we might encounter. And you do this alone? Travel galaxy helping strangers? Usually. Sometimes work with others when situation requires it. But prefer independence. Allows faster response to emergencies. Zaraeth thought about her own life, the rigid hierarchies and political considerations that had governed every decision. The idea of someone choosing to spend their existence helping others with no oversight or obligation except personal conscience was both inspiring and terrifying. What if you make mistakes? What if your help makes situations worse? Then we learn and do better next time. Humans are not perfect, but we try to improve. Marcus finished his calibrations and secured the device. Cannot help everyone, cannot solve every problem, but that does not mean we should not try. 3 hours later, Haven's Gate appeared on their sensors, a massive space station built into what had once been an asteroid. The structure was a fascinating blend of architectural styles, suggesting it had been expanded many times by different species. Ships of every configuration imaginable moved in carefully coordinated patterns around the station's docking bays. "Welcome to neutrality," Marcus said as he began approach procedures. "Here, no one cares about your politics, your past, or your species. Only thing that matters is whether you can pay for services and whether you cause trouble." As they docked, Zara-Eth felt nervousness she hadn't experienced since her rescue. For 3 days she had existed in the safe bubble of human compassion and advanced technology. Now she would have to face the galaxy again to find her place in a universe that had already rejected her once. "I do not know what to do," she admitted as they prepared to disembark. "I have no money, no possessions, no contacts outside hegemony space." "Then we start simple." Marcus handed her a small device that looked like a credit chip. "Station account with enough funds for few weeks' food and lodging, while you decide what comes next." Zara-Eth stared at the chip, overwhelmed by yet another act of casual generosity. "I cannot accept this." "Why not?" Because I have done nothing to earn it. Because I am stranger to you. Because human custom is to help those who need help." Marcus gathered his own gear, preparing to leave the ship. Station has job board, information brokers, many opportunities for skilled navigator. We'll help you explore options. As they walked through Haven's Gate's crowded corridors, Zara-Eth marveled at the diversity of species represented. Vorthok, Corvin, Zilani, Thexus, and dozens of others she couldn't identify, all moving through the station with the easy familiarity of regular visitors. The neutrality Marcus had mentioned wasn't just political, it was cultural, creating a space where natural enemies could conduct business without violence. "How does this work?" she asked, watching a Corvin trader negotiate with a Thexus merchant without any sign of hostility. "Common interest in survival and profit overcomes ancient hatreds," Marcus explained. "Also, Station has very strict enforcement policies. Anyone who starts trouble gets ejected into space without suit." They found the job board in a central plaza where beings from across the galaxy gathered to seek opportunities. The listings were displayed in dozens of languages, though Zara-Eth noticed human script appearing prominently among them. "There," Marcus pointed to one posting that made her eyes widen. "Independent Relief Organization seeks experienced navigators for humanitarian missions. Pay modest but meaningful work." Zara-Eth read the posting twice before the implications fully sank in. "This is human organization." "Yes, one of several that operate from this station." Marcus's expression was carefully neutral. "Coincidence? Probably." She looked at him suspiciously. "You knew about this before we arrived." "May have received communication while you were sleeping. Friend of mine runs that organization. Mentioned they could use someone with your qualifications." "Marcus." "Decision is yours," he said gently. "But think about it. Chance to use your skills helping people who need assistance. Chance to make difference in galaxy." As she stood there, surrounded by the bustling life of the neutral station, Zara-Eth felt the weight of possibility settling around her. For the first time since her disgrace, she could see a future that didn't involve exile and isolation. A future where her conscience could guide her actions instead of political necessity. "I want to meet this friend of yours," she said finally. Marcus's smile was radiant. "Thought you might." The offices of the Independent Relief Consortium occupied an entire deck of Haven's Gate, their clean corridors and organized efficiency standing in marked contrast to the chaotic marketplace energy of the rest of the station. Zara-Eth followed Marcus through areas bustling with beings from dozens of species, all working together with the focused purpose she was beginning to recognize as distinctly human in character. Dr. Saker, Sarah Winters, was not what Zara-Eth had expected. The human woman was small, even by her species' standards, with graying hair and laugh lines that spoke of someone who found joy even in difficult circumstances. When Marcus introduced them, her handshake was firm, and her eyes were sharp with intelligence. "So you're the navigator Marcus rescued from Kepler 442b, Dr. Winters said, as they settled in her office overlooking the station's central hub. "He tells me you have experience with hegemony space lanes and protocols." "Former experience," Zara-Eth clarified. "I am no longer welcome in hegemony territory, which makes you perfect for what we need." Dr. Winters activated a holographic display showing a sector map dotted with red indicators. "These are refugee populations that have fled hegemony expansion. Most are in areas we cannot reach safely because we do not understand Vorthak patrol patterns and security procedures." Zara-Eth studied the display, her navigator training automatically analyzing the positions and calculating probable fleet movements. "You wish to provide aid to hegemony refugees? Food, medical supplies, transportation to safe zones, basic humanitarian assistance." Dr. Winters manipulated the display to show shipping routes and supply caches. "Problem is, most of our people do not understand how to operate in areas where hegemony forces might appear. And you believe I can help with this? Marcus says you refuse to fire on civilian refugees. That tells me you understand the difference between military targets and innocent people." Dr. Winters met her eyes directly. "We need someone who knows hegemony tactics but shares our values." The offer was tempting, but Zara-Eth felt compelled to honesty. "My knowledge may be outdated. I have been out of service for several months. Tactical patterns change slowly. Ship recognition codes, patrol schedules, standard operating procedures. This information remains valuable for years." Dr. Winters pulled up personnel files, showing the diversity of species working for the consortium. "We are not asking you to fight your former comrades, only to help us avoid them while we provide aid to those who need it." Marcus had remained quiet during the discussion, but now he spoke. "Decision is yours, Zara-Eth, but think about what you told me, that you want to help people who have been abandoned. This is chance to do exactly that." That evening, Zara-Eth walked the corridors of Haven's Gate alone, trying to process the opportunity she had been offered. The neutral station never slept, its commercial districts bustling with traders and travelers from across the galaxy. In the observation lounges, she could see ships arriving and departing, carrying their cargoes of goods and dreams to distant worlds. At one viewing port, she encountered another Vorthak, the first she had seen since her rescue. The male was younger than her, wearing the uniform of a merchant marine, and he studied her with the careful attention her people reserved for potential threats. "Sister," he said finally, using the traditional greeting between Vorthak, far from home. "Your scent carries unfamiliar markers. Which house do you serve?" "None," Zara-Eth replied honestly. "I am exile, cast out for dishonor." The young male's posture shifted immediately to one of disdain. "Then you are no sister of mine. The dishonored deserve no recognition from the faithful." He walked away without another word, leaving Zara-Eth alone with the familiar sting of rejection. But as she watched his retreating form, she realized the pain was less sharp than it once had been. The last few days among humans had shown her that honor was not defined by political loyalty, but by personal choices. Interesting conversation? She turned to find Marcus approaching, carrying 2 cups of what she had learned was called coffee. He offered her one with the easy generosity that seemed as natural to him as breathing. "Old acquaintance?" he asked, "representative of my former life." Zara-Eth accepted the warm cup gratefully. "He reminded me why I can never return to what I was." "Is that what you want? To return?" "No." The answer surprised her with its certainty. "I thought I did, but seeing him reminded me of everything I despised about hegemony culture. The casual cruelty, the willingness to abandon those who think differently." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stellar traffic move through space beyond the station. Finally, Marcus spoke. "Dr. Winters asked me to tell you something. First mission is volunteer basis. If you decide it is not right for you, no obligations. But refugee camp near Talos system needs supply run, and hegemony patrol schedules make it dangerous for normal crews. When would we leave? Tomorrow, if you agree. Small team, minimal risk. Good way to test whether this work suits you." That night, Zara lay in her temporary quarters, staring at the ceiling and thinking about paths not taken. A week ago, she had been dying alone on a hostile world, abandoned by everything she had ever believed in. Now she was being offered a chance to rebuild her life around principles that actually meant something. The next morning, she reported to the consortium's departure bay where Dr. Winters was overseeing the loading of a sleek transport vessel. The ship was clearly human design, though larger than Wanderer's Rest and configured specifically for cargo operations. "This is Mercy's wing," Dr. Winters explained as they boarded. "Medical supplies, food synthesizers, emergency shelter materials, enough to keep 2,000 refugees fed and healthy for 3 months. The crew was small and diverse. Besides Dr. Winters and Marcus, there was a Zalani engineer named Keth who spoke in musical tones, a stocky human pilot called Rodriguez, and an enigmatic being that introduced itself only as Observer, and seemed to be made of living shadow. "Navigation station is yours," Dr. Winters said, as they prepared to depart. "Get us to the Talos refugees without running into hegemony patrols." Zara settled into the familiar environment of a ship's navigation center, her hands moving over the controls with practiced confidence. The human interface was more sophisticated than anything she had used before, but the principles were universal. Within minutes, she had plotted a course that would take them through the outer edges of the system, avoiding the patrol routes she knew from memory. "Course laid in," she reported. "Estimated travel time 8 hours, with 93% probability of avoiding detection." 93%? Rodriguez asked from the pilot's station. "That's oddly specific." "Hegemony patrols follow mathematical patterns designed to maximize coverage with minimum resources," Zara explained. "I know the algorithms they use. Unless they have changed procedures significantly since my discharge, we should remain undetected." As Mercy's wing entered hyperspace, Zara found herself working alongside the crew with an ease that surprised her. The humans treated her as a valued team member rather than a former enemy, and the non-humans seemed to take their cue from human behavior. Even Observer, whose nature remained mysterious, acknowledged her contributions with what might have been approval. 6 hours into the journey, their hyperspace sensors detected something that made Zara-Th's blood turn cold. "Hegemony interdiction field," she announced, her voice tight with concern. "Large-scale deployment, probably battle group strength." Dr. Winters moved to stand behind her station. "Can we avoid it?" Zara studied the sensor data, her mind racing through possibilities. "Field is positioned to block direct approach to Talos system. They know about the refugee camp." "Military operation?" Marcus asked. "Possible, but..." She adjusted the sensors, trying to get a clearer reading. "Energy signatures are wrong for assault fleet. This looks like containment protocol." "Meaning?" Dr. Winters' voice was carefully controlled. "They are not planning to attack the refugees. They are planning to capture them for processing." Zara-Th's hands clenched into fists as she remembered similar operations from her service days. "Standard procedure for dealing with populations that have fled hegemony territory. Round them up, determine their usefulness, dispose of the rest." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of ship systems. Finally, Observer spoke in its strange, whispering voice. "Can the blockade be penetrated?" Zara studied the tactical display, analyzing patrol patterns and field strengths with the expertise of years of military training. "Possible, but risky," would require precise timing and knowledge of current security protocols, which you have, Marcus said quietly. Which I had, months ago. She turned to face the crew. If protocols have changed, if new procedures have been implemented, we could be walking into a trap. Dr. Winters was quiet for a long moment, weighing options against risks. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of command. The alternative is abandoning 2,000 innocent people to imprisonment or worse. Are you willing to try? Zara-Eth looked around the bridge at faces that showed concern, but not fear, determination, but not recklessness. These beings were prepared to risk their lives for strangers they had never met, simply because it was the right thing to do. Yes, she said firmly, I am willing. The approach to the hegemony blockade required all of Zara-Eth's knowledge and intuition. She guided Mercy's wing through gravitational shadows and sensor blind spots, using techniques she had learned during her years as a military navigator. Twice they came close to detection. But each time her understanding of Vorthak procedures allowed them to slip past without triggering alarms. Impressive, Observer whispered as they cleared the final sensor line. Your former masters trained you well. They trained me to think like them, Zara-Eth replied. That makes it easier to anticipate their actions. The refugee camp on Talos 7th was worse than she had imagined. Thousands of beings from dozens of species huddled in improvised shelters, their faces showing the hollow despair of people who had lost everything. Many were injured, all were malnourished, and the medical facilities were completely overwhelmed. How long have they been here? Dr. Winters asked the camp's coordinator, an elderly Thexus whose own condition showed the stress of trying to care for so many with so few resources. 8 months since the first arrivals, the coordinator replied. We have done our best, but supplies run low and more refugees arrive every week. As the consortium team began unloading their cargo, Zara-Eth found herself working alongside people she might once have considered enemies of the state. But watching a human medic treat an injured Vorthak child with the same care she would show her own species, seeing Observer somehow communicate comfort to a traumatized family despite lacking any recognizable features, she began to understand what Marcus had meant about human values spreading to others. You are Vorthak, said a voice behind her. She turned to find an elderly female of her own species wearing the remnants of what had once been fine clothing. The woman's bearing suggested nobility, though her current circumstances had clearly reduced her to the same desperate condition as everyone else in the camp. I was, Zara-Eth replied carefully. Now I am simply someone trying to help. My name is Veltana, formerly of House Jerix. My family held estates in the outer colonies before the hegemony decided our territory was needed for strategic purposes. The woman studied Zara-Eth with sharp intelligence. You wear no house colors, bear no rank insignia, yet you move with military bearing. Former military, discharged for differences of opinion with current policies. Veltana smiled grimly. A euphemism I recognize. You refused an order that violated your conscience. Something like that. Then you are wise as well as brave, the older woman gestured toward the activity around them. These humans and their allies risk much to help us. They ask nothing in return, expect no payment or political advantage. Such behavior is unknown in my experience. Zara-Eth watched Dr. Winters organizing the distribution of medical supplies with the efficiency of someone who had done this many times before. I am learning that humans define honor differently than we do. Perhaps they define it correctly, and we have been wrong. That evening, as the relief operations continued, Zara-Eth found herself in the camp's makeshift command center, helping coordinate the distribution of supplies. Her knowledge of Vorthak social structures proved invaluable in understanding the complex relationships between different refugee groups, and her military training helped optimize logistics. "You have natural talent for humanitarian work," Dr. Winters observed as they planned the next day's activities. "Ever consider making it a career?" The thought had occurred to me. Zaraeth looked around the command center, where beings from across the galaxy work together toward common goals. "Though I wonder if I can truly escape my past." "Past shapes us, but does not define us," Observer whispered from the shadows. "What matters is what we choose to become." The next morning brought news that made everyone's blood run cold. Hegemony forces had begun moving toward the planet, their containment protocols shifting to active roundup operations. The refugees had perhaps 6 hours before the first dropships arrived. "Evacuation is impossible," Rodriguez reported from the communications center. "Even if we had enough ships, which we do not, the blockade would prevent any mass exodus." Dr. Winters studied tactical displays with the grim focus of someone accustomed to impossible situations. "We need a distraction, something to draw their attention away from the surface long enough to get people to safety." "The blockade fleet will respond to any threat according to standard protocols," Zaraeth said slowly, an idea forming in her mind. "If they detected what appeared to be a major refugee transport trying to break through their lines—" Marcus looked at her sharply. "They would concentrate on stopping it, leaving gaps in their coverage that smaller ships could exploit." She turned to Dr. Winters. "Mercy's wing could simulate a large transport if we modified its sensor signature. Draw the fleet away from Talos 7 while evacuation ships slip through the gaps." "That would be suicide mission," Rodriguez protested. "They would destroy you before you got halfway through their formation." "Not necessarily." Zaraeth called up tactical displays, her navigator training taking over. "Human technology gives us advantages they do not expect. And I know their response patterns, their command structures, how they think." Dr. Winters was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing the risks against the potential to save thousands of lives. When she spoke, her voice was steady despite the magnitude of what she was proposing. "How long would you need to give the evacuation ships?" 4 hours minimum to load everyone. 6 would be safer." "Can Mercy's wing survive that long against a hegemony battle group?" Zaraeth looked around the command center at faces showing fear and hope in equal measure. These people were prepared to risk everything for strangers simply because it was right. How could she do less? "With Marcus flying and me navigating? Yes, I believe we can." The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation. Evacuation ships began arriving from Haven's Gate and other neutral ports, volunteer crews responding to Dr. Winters' emergency broadcasts. Meanwhile, Zaraeth and Rodriguez worked to modify Mercy's wing's sensor signature, making it appear to be a massive refugee transport instead of a single relief vessel. "You do not have to do this," Dr. Winters said as they prepared to launch their desperate gambit. "There are other options." "Name one," Zaraeth replied, checking her navigation systems one final time. "I cannot, but that does not mean—" "Dr. Winters." Zaraeth turned to face the human woman who had given her this chance at redemption. 3 months ago, I was dying alone, abandoned by my own people for doing what I thought was right. Today, I have the opportunity to save thousands of innocent lives. If that is not worth any risk, then nothing is." As Mercy's wing launched from Talos 7th, broadcasting false identification codes and sensor shadows that made it appear to be a huge transport packed with fleeing refugees, Zaraeth felt a strange peace settle over her. Whatever happened next, she was finally living according to principles that mattered. "Hegemony fleet is responding," Marcus reported from the pilot station. 12 vessels breaking formation to intercept. Time to evacuation completion? 3 hours, 40 minutes. Zara-Eth smiled grimly as she plotted their course through the approaching battle group. Then we give them 3 hours and 40 minutes. What followed was the most terrifying and exhilarating experience of Zara-Eth's life. Using every trick of navigation and evasion she had learned during her military career, combined with human technology that seemed to bend the laws of physics, they led the hegemony forces on a deadly dance through space. Marcus flew with a skill that bordered on the supernatural, somehow anticipating enemy movements and slipping through impossible gaps in their formation. When weapons fire got too close, Mercy's wing would phase partially out of normal space, allowing energy beams to pass harmlessly through their position. "How are they doing this?" came the frustrated voice of a hegemony commander over the communications channel. "No refugee transport should be capable of such maneuvers." Zara-Eth almost smiled as she recognized the voice of Commander Thexval, an officer she had served under years earlier. The same rigid thinking that had led to her court-martial was now working in their favor. "Because you are thinking like hegemony, officer," she whispered to herself. "You expect refugees to be helpless." Hour after hour, they continued their deadly game of hide-and-seek among the asteroids and gas clouds of the outer system. Mercy's wing took hits that would have destroyed any normal vessel, but human shielding technology and redundant systems kept them operational. "Evacuation 70% complete," came Dr. Winters' voice over the communications channel. "Hold them for 90 more minutes." "Understood," Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the plasma fire exploding around them. But 90 minutes proved to be too long. A lucky shot from a hegemony cruiser penetrated their shields and damaged the dimensional displacement system. Suddenly, Mercy's wing was trapped in normal space, facing a dozen enemy vessels with nowhere to run. "This is Commander Thexval to unknown vessel," the communication channel crackled. "You have fought well, but your ship is damaged and you are outnumbered. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to military protocols." Marcus looked at Zara-Eth questioningly. They both knew that military protocols for captured refugees meant interrogation, imprisonment, or worse. "Evacuation status?" Zara-Eth asked. 85% complete. Need 40 more minutes." 40 minutes they did not have. The hegemony ships were closing in, weapons charged and ready to end the chase. In moments, they would be overwhelmed. Then Observer spoke from the shadows of the bridge, its whisper carrying strange harmonics. "There is another option, if you are willing to trust me." Before anyone could respond, the shadowy being flowed toward the ship's communication system, somehow interfacing directly with the electronics. Suddenly, every hegemony vessel in the area was receiving a transmission that made their crews step back in shock. Observer's voice, when it spoke across the void, carried authority that seemed to resonate in the bones of everyone who heard it. "This is Legion Observer 7 of the Shadow Compact. The vessel you are pursuing is under our protection. Withdraw immediately or face consequences." The effect was immediate and dramatic. Hegemony vessels that had been closing for the kill suddenly reversed course, their crews clearly recognizing a threat beyond their capability to handle. Commander Thexval's voice returned to the communication channel, but now it carried barely controlled fear. "Shadow Compact vessel, we were not aware of your presence in this system. Our apologies for any interference with your operations." "Apology noted. Withdraw to minimum safe distance and maintain position until we have completed our business here." As the hegemony fleet retreated to a respectful distance, Marcus stared at Observer in amazement. "Shadow Compact," he whispered. "Ancient agreement between my people and yours," Observer replied, its voice carrying what might have been amusement. "Humans helped us during dark time in our history. We promised aid when needed." 40 minutes later, the last evacuation ship reported clear of the system. 2,000 refugees were safe, carried away to neutral space where they could rebuild their lives in freedom. And Mercy's wing, its mission complete, made its way back to Haven's Gate with a crew that had learned something profound about the power of cooperation across species lines. In the days that followed, Zara-Eth found herself officially inducted into the Independent Relief Consortium, her knowledge and skills putting her at the center of operations that saved lives across the galaxy. But more than that, she had found something she had never expected to possess again. A sense of purpose that aligned with her deepest beliefs about right and wrong. "Any regrets?" Marcus asked as they prepared for their next mission, this time to deliver medical supplies to a plague-stricken world in the Outer Rim. Zara-Eth looked around the consortium's operations center, where beings from dozens of species worked together toward the simple goal of helping those in need. On the main display, updates scrolled past, showing successful relief operations, successful evacuations, successful medical interventions, each representing lives saved and hope restored. "None," she said firmly. "For the first time since leaving my homeworld, I am exactly where I belong." As their ship departed Haven's Gate for the Outer Rim, Zara-Eth reflected on the journey that had brought her here. Injured and forsaken on a hostile world, she had been rescued by a human whose people had shown her that honor was not about obedience to authority, but about protecting those who needed protection. Now she was part of something larger than herself, something that made the galaxy a better place one act of compassion at a time. And in the process, she had discovered that being abandoned by her old life had been the first step toward finding her true purpose. The stars stretched ahead of them, filled with infinite possibilities for good, and Zara-Eth faced them with the quiet confidence of someone who had finally learned what it meant to be truly free.